Yeah, let me just, the direction I was going to go, though, like that's another kind of a side example.
Sorry.
No, it's cool. Like, they're both kind of hand in hand, really. That's more the political. But I was just saying the political use of violence is what Israel did in order to get once they bombed the King David Hotel, the British, there was just an uproar in Britain. And basically it was kind of like Iraq now, like sort of. They wanted the British to leave Palestine. Get out. It's a waste of money. It's not even worth our time. There's not even any real interest here. Let's get out. So they did. They left, and then there was a power vacuum. And then guess who seized that power vacuum? The Jews were more well organized than the Arabs, and they got the power. And so my point is this: the fact that the Israeli nation was founded upon violence, because really the Jews were more efficient at conducting violence. I don't think the Arabs conducted a whole lot of violence against the British. It was more the Jews doing it. Get out, because the British were establishing limitations on how many Jews could immigrate into Palestine. So the Zionists were just really upset with that. They did have the Holocaust. It's just violence begets more violence.
Right.
They were.
It was a culture of survival of the fittest, and who can hit the hardest.
Yeah, and so the Jews had that mindset. I think a little more than the Arabs initially did. Now, don't get me wrong. The Arabs did do retaliatory attacks back to the Israelis, but the Israelis would or these Zionist organizations.
It's interesting. There's different types of Zionists, and apparently this Irgun was the far right-wing Zionists who believe they essentially want 100% of Palestine for all. They wanted a Jewish nation. Essentially, they ultimately want to push out the Palestinian and Arab people. It's purely they've been working on it.
Pushed them out.
But what's interesting is this Irgun became the Freedom Party, which became Likud, which is the far-right Israeli political party now, and then Kadima and these others sort of branched off from Likud or something. But it's interesting that sort of, how you can trace that back, and this, it seems obvious to me that this far-right-wing Zionism still dominates because, Israel has increasingly, with each successive conflict, especially the 1967 conflict, they've sort of seized more and more Palestinian land, and they've strategically seized the regions that are the best agriculturally in terms of water, even within the West Bank, which is supposedly the land that Palestinians. It's
all strategic.
They've got 300,000 Israeli settlers that are by all
settlements.
They're illegal settlements. The international community says they're illegal.
For sure.
And these settlements are they're Jews only settlements. They say Jews only in these settlements, and the roads that interconnect them are Jews only roads. And and then there's millions of refugees that are not allowed back in. Yeah. And to me,
we talk about.
It's like a peaceful ethnic cleansing in a way. Not peaceful, but like.
What do you call that? Where it's a war
of attrition.
Of attrition.
And you talk about violence. Well, the thing that really gets me so much is that we are really trying to avoid violence because we say we really want peace and freedom. We want peace and freedom, but at what price? Not only talking about the methods or the mission or how we do it, but what is it going to cost in personal resources, human resources, practical financial resources? Is it worth it to keep going and keep going? That's why, some people wonder how long we're going to be in the Mideast. Well, we could end up like South Korea, and then West Germany. We were over there a long time.
Once we go in, we seem to never leave. It's like, what's interesting, you mentioned the cost, and really I think over half of every American income tax dollar goes to military war spending. And so I think that's it. And that recently we passed the $1 trillion mark for the Middle East wars, and that's just the direct appropriations. There's actually, if you include all the indirect long-term costs, the wars are going to end up $3 or $4 trillion.
Financially.
Healthcare for wounded troops is huge.
Yeah, the VA is not only trying to help troops from past wars. We're putting, you got an oil spill down there south of Louisiana in the ocean, and it's perpetual. It's still coming out. Well, as long as we've got combat going on in the Mideast,
the money's just
we've got a perpetual of human suffering.
Yeah.
The suicide rate in the military now is worse than it's ever been.
Exceeds the casualty combat.
And you've got the people coming back from war that have all these issues.
PTSD.
And they're going
because let me tell you something.
Physical and mental.
When and if you have that realization, and there's people that will never have this realization. There's some people that do. I don't know why, but when and if you do have this realization that you're not entirely sure what you were fighting for,
it does something.
That's a very bad feeling to have.
Especially when you get back. When you're over there, you get mad and angry, and when you come back, you get sad and irritable.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting though, because you see a lot of people on the left, the progressive left, that are opposed to the wars because people are dying and they want peace or whatever. But then people on the right tend to be people that are really concerned about economic issues primarily, especially. I mean, that's one of the big things. It's spending and taxes and things like that they're concerned with. Well, I mean, one of the biggest expenses, and it's never talked about in the media much, and conservatives seem to not ever really hook on to this, the massive military spending, and conservatives talk about debt, but there's this a lot of our debt is caused by our military spending. I mean, I don't know why we talk about the national debt and people talk about, well, health care and these other costs, but military spending is never on the table in terms of wasteful.
Not even discussed.
Can you imagine if we had, and I'm not in favor of a draft. Right. I am not in favor of the draft. I'm not in favor of draft. No. But can you imagine if we had a draft during the 90s and the 2000s, in the last 15, 20 years, if we had a draft like they had in the 50s and the 60s,
there'd be much more.
They had Korea and Vietnam, 50s, 60s. Well, we've had 90s, we had our Mideast, our Gulf War, and with Bush, we don't have the draft because you know what the draft does, even though I don't like it? It holds people accountable. Yeah. You are accountable because you might have a brother, and if your brother's going over there, you've got something at stake here, and you want the government to get it done and get him back home. When we went to Vietnam, we were going over there for 12 months, and after we've been over there a while, we start counting on our calendars. 11, 10, 9, 8.
Now we're
over there looking to get back to the real world.
Well, now we have stop loss where we it's a backdoor draft.
In Vietnam, you could see the light at the end of the tunnel because I'm going to get to come home. But in Vietnam, we had people that got to come home and never had to go back. In the Mideast, you've got people that have been 3 or 4 tours over there, and they come home and their family knows in 6 to 12 months they're going again. That's not right.